Okay, thank you, Mr. Masson. Right, any more questions in public on this this topic? Councillor Nicholl.
Thank you very much. Obviously, a lot of the hydrogen project has been subject to external funding that we've managed to secure along the way. If we're going down this route, will any of that previous funding packages be impacted in any way by any of this?
Mr. Sweetnam, do you?
The funding we've secured, the external funding we've secured is for very specific aspects of the hydrogen hub. So my response would be no.
Okay, any further questions?
Can we just clarify, has that been run by governance or is that your personal view? Sorry, I wasn't sure. Sorry, sorry, Mr. Sweetnam, sorry.
So the officers and stakeholders have submitted outline business case to Scottish Government in order to unlock energy transition funding from that source. And so it's those costs that I'm referring to.
Okay, any further questions from anyone? Can we agree the recommendations in the report? Councillor Bolton?
Convener, I haven't actually got a question, but I just wanted to congratulate officers on all the work that they've done, because they've taken this to a new level and it's really impressive. And I just didn't want the report to go and the authors to go without being commended for all the work that they're doing and the progress they've made. So sorry, it's not a question, but I just didn't want to not see that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Okay, can we agree the recommendations in the report?
Agreed.
Agreed. Okay, thank you. Moving on to agenda item 12.1, the North East Scotland Joint Mortuary Full Business Case. It is my intention to move this in simpliciter to the budget process. Can we get agreement on that?
No.
Okay, I'll move a procedural motion then to move it in simpliciter to the budget process. Can we take do I have a seconder?
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. Mr. Masson, can we go to the vote on the procedural motion?
Yeah, we have a procedural motion by the convener. Please vote for or against the procedural motion. Convener?
For.
Vice Convener?
For.
Councillor Bolton?
For.
Councillor Cook?
Against.
Councillor Lane?
For.
Councillor McRae?
Against.
Councillor Nicholl?
Against.
Councillor Houghton?
For.
Councillor Ewell?
Against.
The procedural motion is carried by 5 to 4.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to 12.2, the listing of the Aberdeen Inner City multi-storey blocks. Any questions on this one? Councillor Bolton, your hand is up. Is that a legacy hand? It is indeed. Councillor Nicholl.
Convener, I just wondered, given the widespread feeling that's been reported on this, if it would be helpful if the officers perhaps gave us a little introduction and commentary in and around the appeals process. That will maybe save a number of questions, certainly from myself anyway.
Indeed, good idea, Councillor Nicholl. Do we have an officer to give an overview of that process? Mr. Booth, are you still on the call?
Good evening, convener. Yes, I'm still here. I was just waiting to see if a colleague would jump in front of me there in terms of the appeals process. So I would draw members' attention just to the briefing paper that's been provided as part of the report. That's Appendix 1. That gives a background to the decision, the consultation process, what the listed consent means, and the statutory right of appeal. In effect, the council has a 3-month period to make an appeal again. Well, the council or indeed any other affected party has a 3-month process to make an appeal to Historic Environmental Scotland. Only those directly affected, as I said, are eligible for that appeal. And I suppose the important point is appeal can only be made on the grounds that the building in question is not of special architectural or historic interest and should be removed from the list. The appeals process follows that. I think in addition to the report, we have been taking some advice from consultants in that area, and are awaiting some proposals from consultants who are giving us some assistance around quantifying that just special architectural or historic interest angle. Within that, I think there's a few areas to focus on. The fact that all 8 buildings are Grade A listed rather than B or any other designation, and also the fact that all 8 have been listed as being important rather than maybe just 1 or 2 examples. Hopefully that briefing note's relatively comprehensive and easy to follow for members. I'm not sure if we've got much more to add.
Thank you, Mr. Booth. Councillor Nicholl, is your hand still up if you've got further questions?
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Booth. I have, obviously, it's quite a specialist area, and certainly not one that I'm overly familiar with. But if we're speaking to specialists, have we got any feedback from them that can be shared in a public forum about what they think is the appeal prospects?
Convener, I would be concerned about sharing in a public forum what's their confidential professional advice at the moment, particularly when we've not fully appointed them yet until after this meeting.
Okay, well, we could if there's any more questions in public, or we can flip over to private. Councillor Cook.
Sorry, Convener, I'll actually wait for Councillor Nicholl to finish off his. I was being a bit trigger happy with my
Councillor
hand.
Nicholl, have you got further questions in public?
If we are going to be going into private, they would probably very much fall into that category as well. So as far as I'm concerned, this is as good a time as any. I don't know what other questions other people have that's for a public forum.
Yeah, let's see. Well, Councillor Cook, is your is your question for public?
Yeah, I think it probably is okay for public. It was just a question on process. I'm obviously not a lawyer, but looking at Schedule 3 of the 2014 Act, if I'm reading it correctly, and I stress I'm a layman, not a lawyer, it looks as though there is the potential to appeal to Scottish ministers against a decision taken by Historic Environment Scotland. Can the legal folk advise whether I'm reading it right or getting hold of completely the wrong end of the stick? And if you can appeal, can you appeal on, sorry, do you have to appeal on the same basis that you would make the appeal to HES, or can you appeal on the grounds of reasonableness, arguing, for example, that this is a completely bonkers decision?
Ms. Lawson, I don't know if you want to come in on that, or Mr. Booth, have you got the answer?
Just for clarification, the appeal is to the Department for Planning and Environmental Appeals, so the Scottish ministers. They would appoint a reporter who would view that and report back to them. So it's the same grounds of appeal.
So the reporter would, so assuming that, sorry, scenario is the council or another party appeals to Historic Environment Scotland. Historic Environment Scotland say, no, we got it right in the first place. We really like these 8 brutalist buildings. And then the party that's appealed and been turned down by Historic Environment Scotland can then appeal against that decision to the planning service and to a reporter. Yeah? Is that what I'm hearing?
No, the appeal would be to the Department for Planning and Environmental Appeals, which is on behalf of the Scottish Ministers. There's no appeal direct to Historic Environment Scotland.
Oh, right, so the appeal that is being considered would be heard by a reporter who's independent and a civil servant, not by Historic Environment Scotland, i.e. the people who made the decision in the first place. Yeah?
That's my understanding, yeah.
Okay, I think Gail wants to come in. Yeah, sorry, Miss Beattie,
I think it might just be helpful just in terms of that process, given my long history of planning appeals. So just to be clear, Councillor Cook, the council as a landowner or as an interested party would be appealing the decision of Historic Environment Scotland to the DPEA. So that's the Department of Planning and Environmental Appeals. That's a process that's been in place for a couple of years now. So that is then an independent reporter would be appointed. He would make a decision, and then that decision is then ratified by a Scottish Minister. So there is that element of ministerial involvement, but the appeal is to the DPEA, not to Historic Environment Scotland.
Thanks, that's a really helpful clarification, because I wasn't clear about that from the papers and also looking at the HES website. And I'm right, would I be right in saying that 90% of the time Scottish ministers basically accept what the reporter says, but there are rare occasions where they don't? I think there was a recent one in relation to a housing development on the Culloden battlefield.
Convener, through you. So the appeal process is always a matter of judgment. So that judgment, as you're aware from your long service on planning committee, is a matter of balancing up a number of competing issues. So Scottish ministers have occasionally taken a different view, but that's on the balance of the appropriate issues, not just on a whim.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cook. Councillor Nicholl, have you got a question still in public?
No, Convener, that's what I was saying. I think anything I have would probably be better in private. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Masson, can you stop recording? We'll go into private.